Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is NE150, and this is Module 2. We're going to be adding a material, so please watch the introduction to materials and shaders. And after you watch that, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're going to select the object, and we're going to add a material. There's two ways you can do this. You can go into surfaces, modeling, and we've got rendering, and we've got these materials here. Now these are just basic Maya materials. We'll talk about that's the introduction to materials that you saw, but we're going to be using something different. We want to use a more complex material, and it's an Arnold shader material. So let's go ahead and do that. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go on to the shelf, and you're going to have to find Arnold. If you look up here on the tab, just click on the Arnold tab. Alright, so with that done, we now have access to not the materials, but we have access to the lights and some other things in here, but not materials. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the object, make sure it turns green, right click over it, and go all the way down to assign new material. Okay, if you go to assign favorite material, it will open up basic Maya materials, and we don't want those right now. Sometime that you may want to use them, they're right there, but we're going to assign a new material. When we click on that, this opens up the assign new material option for the menu, and we want to look for Arnold and then click on shader. So Arnold has all these shaders. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but the main one you're going to probably use 95% of the time is probably the AI standard surface material. We're going to click on that, and that's going to assign the material. If we go to the attributes, it will show up in here. If you don't see that, you will do a Control+A, okay, and that will shift between the attributes and the attribute editor and the channel box. Okay, so I'm going to do Control A, and you'll see that we have tabs here. We have Cube 1, Cube Shape 1, and Dice High, and then we've got AI Standard Surface. This is the material we're going to be working with. It's just like the other materials that you saw in the introduction to materials and shaders video. It's got the same type of thing. Now these things are a little bit different. This is a more of a complex shader, and it also supports PBR, photo-based rendering. So we want that. We've also got, and you can see how it's massive. We've got transmission, subsurface coat, sheen, emission, thin film, geometry, matte, AOVs, advanced. So we got a lot of attributes in this particular shader. And that's what we want. We want to be able to add a lot of different things to the shader to create it as physically realistic as possible. The reason why we're not going to UV map and texture this is I want to kind of go through materials anyway with you and show you how you can apply just plain, simple materials. Now, usually your materials will look brand new. A lot of times when you do texturing, you're going to want to add grime, grunge, dirt, scratches, that kind of thing. It's not that we can't add these with this, they're just not as accurate, okay, the basic materials. So we're just going to do basic materials for this assignment to show you that you can just add basic materials to objects to make them look brand new. Normally, things are not new. They're used, but if you're doing product placement and you're doing products for commercials, you want them as clean and as pristine as possible. So we're just going to look at this as we just open a new package of dice, and this is what we get. So that works best with just using materials and not adding textures to them. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and look at this material. We can see that the color, we can change that to any color we want. Now what we want is we do not want white or gray. We want something that is a little more off-white, okay? The best thing, when you look at dice, they're not perfectly white. They're ivory, okay? So we want to add a little bit of yellow. So we're going to go into yellow, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and lighten that up to an ivory. Okay, so you can see the difference between. You can see where I'm circling here off to the right. You can see that the original color was this gray. Now we've got more of an ivory color. Okay, now it looks kind of yellow here, and we can change that if when we're rendering and stuff, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So this is what we had before, and this is what, if I go back in here, if I just click on that and go into the yellow, now that might be too yellow, so what we can do is we can darken a little bit if we want to, okay, or we can keep it light if we want to. So I'm going to click on that again, bring it back up, and just bring it just a little bit lighter. Okay, there we go. Maybe that would work better. Okay, but we won't know until we actually get into lighting this if that looks good or not. Okay, all right, so the next thing, that's our original, so we probably should rename that. I'm going to call this Dice Body. Okay, and I'm just going to do _TX. So that's our texture. All right, so we're just adding color to this now. We're not going to mess with anything else. We're not messing with reflection or the roughness or how the light, you know, glistens over top of it. I'm not really too worried about that right now at this point. When we are rendering, that's where we're going to really look into it and do some renders and make some changes and get exactly what we want. But right now, we're just going to add the materials, okay? So I'm going to click off of that. Now we need to create another material for the inside of this divot. And that can be kind of painful if we were to go in there, and I'm going to hit the F11 key, or you can right click and go to face mode. I'm just going to hit F11. That gets me into face mode. And you can see that, what if I want to go in here and select all of these? Okay, so I'm going to go in here and hold the shift key down and select all of those. And the thing is, I can't really see what's happening here. Okay, it's hard to see because the yellow kind of blends in with the orange, plus this is going to take me forever if I do this one at a time. Okay, so there's got to be a better way of selecting these. Okay, there is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into and just click off. And I'm going to use, of course, the paint selection tool. Okay, now it might be really big. Okay, we used this before. Okay, so if you see that happening, just hold the B key down, B as in Bobby, and hold it down. And you just want to be able to have it maybe a little bit smaller than that, because we only want to select just these faces right here. Just those 4 faces in the center. And then I'm going to show you a hotkey that allows you to grow that selection outwards. Okay, so hold the shift key down, and then you have the arrows, the grow, which is right by the M key. So look for the M key. You see we have growing, which is the right arrow, and we can bring it down. So the arrow on the right goes up, and the arrow on the left goes down. Okay, so you can shrink and expand a selection. Okay, that's holding the shift key down, and right by the M key, you'll have these 2 greater than and less than keys, look like arrows, and you'll click on those. And we're going to go up to right about there. Okay, so you're asking yourself, that's great, but what if we want to do them all at the same time? Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to click off, okay, and hit the Q key and then click off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into paint selection mode, and I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to start painting the center. Now the thing is, it's hard to see those because it's orange and yellow. It's kind of tough to see that. So maybe I should just, for now, just do a different color. Okay, so I'm going to go back into selection mode. I'm going to go back into here, and what if we just make this really dark gray? The thing is, I still have my color. All my colors are here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into selection mode. This will make it a lot easier for me to see those. Look at that, much nicer. Okay, so now I'm going to be in face mode. So if I'm in object mode, I just hit F11, go into face mode, get a little bit closer here, And I might even just do this to make things a little bit faster. Okay, so there's the center ones. Okay, I'm going to go into my selection tool, my paint selection tool, hold down the shift key, and if you're too far away, don't worry, you can go back in here, and I'm just going to do this one down here. And you want to be in the center. Now, see, if you make a mistake, which I did, just hold the control key and just deselect and add those. There we go. So you want to be very careful. Sometimes you need to scroll, rotate around and to get those. And if you need to be closer, please do that. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this real quick and put a little elevator music on as I'm doing this, and you guys can follow along and make sure that you pause if I'm going too fast. All right, here we go. Okay, we are all done. I hope you enjoyed the elevator music. All right, so now we're going to rotate around and make sure we have everything centered. Everything looks good. Just make sure I got everything. And if you missed something, no big deal. You can come back and redo it. But let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to select one side. Doesn't matter which one. Just kind of get really close to one of them. Okay? So I'm going to hold the Shift key, and right next to the M key, we've got greater than and less than and keys, and you're going to go to the right key that looks like an arrow, that's greater than, and just start tapping it. Okay? Tap, 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 until you get right about there, and that'll be we're going to add our next material to that. They're going to have two different materials, you can see. There we go. And that's the center. You can see you can rotate around. Perfect. That looks great. Fantastic. So now we're going to make those black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Q key. I'm going to right click over the object, go down to assign new material, and in material we're going to go into shader under Arnold shader. We're going to click on AI standard surface again. Okay, click on that. And this time we are going to go black. Now you don't want to go 100% 00 black. You want to go 0.5 maybe. And that's not enough. I mean 0.05. Let's go 0.05. That's very dark. I think we could go a little bit darker than that. 0.25 would be good. 0.25. You don't want to go 0 though. That's unnaturally black. Okay, and you'll see what I mean. You could even go 0.015. Let's try that one. That's better. I think that's pretty good. We could probably go lower than that, maybe 0.005. Let's try that. There we go. You just don't want total black because that looks really weird. All right, so I'm going to hit the F8 key again, get back into object mode. There we go, and click off. And that's what we have, okay? Now we want this back to the color that we want. That's okay because it's really easy. I'll show you. So we've got we got the dice body. That's that one. So we are going to click on this called AI Standard Surface 2, okay? And in here we're going to rename that pips, okay, underscore tx, okay. The pips are the divots, okay, and those are set at pretty close to black, but not quite, 0.005. We'll see how that looks in our renders. If it looks really awful, then we can bring it up just a little bit, but we just don't want to go 0, 0, 0. All right, so with the dice body, now we can go back into the color. Instead of gray or dark gray, we'll just go back into the color we had before. There we go. So there is our finished piece. You can see that the light is kind of hitting it right inside there. You can see that. Okay. So there's kind of our finished dice, and that is basically that. Now, I do want to show you something. That is the easiest way when you apply materials. So I do want to show you something new. It's called the Hypershade. It's not really new. It's something new to you. And this is how we can put things together. So let's click on this and let's kind of go back and see how it was all created. Okay, so I'm going to click on the Hypershade. All right, so this is what it looks like. And I'm going to put the cue or the dice over to the side here. All right. So it's selected and it shows everything that we kind of did. We've got the shader dice body. Okay. If I double click on it, it shows up in here. Okay. What it does, it gives us I didn't mean to do that. Let's bring that back out again. All right. So it gives us a little shader ball. Okay. Which is cool. And it kind of gives us an idea what that shader or that object will look like when we are messing around with the material. Okay, there's the light source. Okay, so to kind of take you through what's happening, it's nice to have something in real time that kind of tells us how that's going to look. Okay, so we got the shader ball, we've got cloth. Okay, and you've got different types of models that you can check your shader with. Okay, that might help you visualize a little bit better. Let's go down to glass fill. Yeah, that's better. That's more for a transparency stuff. Hair sphere, teapot, or the shader ball might be the best. Okay, I'll just go with the shader ball. Okay. So we're going to go into, so the color we've already got set up the way we want it, and we can always go lighter. Let's go a bit lighter than that. So we go a little bit lighter. There we go. That might help a little bit. And we just need to be off-white a little bit. The weight depends on, the lower you go, the darker the shader will be. So 0.5. or 0.6 like that would just darken the shader. It's the same as going in here and turning down the value. It's the same thing. So it kind of takes care of the value part of it. So the weight, let's go back to 1. We want to usually keep it at 1. Diffuse roughness. Okay, now this gives a roughness feeling to the actual lighting, how light is diffused across the surface of that object. So it just makes it a little bit rougher. Okay, metalness will make it basically reflective. It's like metal can reflect. If you shine metal up enough, it'll become reflective. So that's kind of helps with your reflection. Okay, so all right, so then we've got specularity. Let's bring that back down again. So we got a roughness here. We can mess with that. I'm going to bring back down to 0. Okay, when we move this up, we've got our specular weight too. So if I bring that down, you notice that if If I bring it down to 0, that means it's flat. It's kind of like flat paint. Okay, when I rotate, you don't see a specular highlight. The light isn't reflecting at all. So I'm going to bring this back, weight back up, so we can see what kind of stuff we can get. And you can change the color of the hotspot. So if a light is a different color, you can change that to a different color. So say it's green. And you can see that how it illuminates on the object, on the highlights and everything. So usually we keep that at just plain white. So let's go back in here and just make that white again. But if you need a color highlight, a change in color, you can change it that way. Roughness now is the same kind of thing. The higher I go, it spreads that light out. So instead of being really sharp, okay, the lower I go, you can see how that really bright spot is. And you can also starting to see reflection in the object. So if you bring the metalness up, you can start really seeing this reflection, how you can focus the reflection from the metalness and working together with those two, metalness and roughness, how you can really fine-tune that reflection, okay, depending on the material that what you want it to look like, to basically kind of reflect what a realistic reflection would be on a certain material. So this would be more of a mirror type of situation. You know, like a mirror that you look into a solid mirror, and then you bring that back out again. Okay, and so we've got those two working together. You can soften up, bring this up a little bit more, and then soften this up even more. So you can get all kinds of like satin, a satin reflection. Okay, so you're going to be using all of these together, the weight and all that, to find out what works best for you and the situation. Let's bring that metalness down, and let's bring that roughness all the way up, and that gives you a flat looking object. Okay, so I'm going to bring that back down again and add a little bit of specularity, and you can see that there's just a bit of a difference there. Anything over 0.8 or 0.5, you're going to run into, it's going to get really flat looking pretty quick. All right. So flat looking speculars usually feels more like rubber, looks more like rubber, what rubber would look like. And as you go closer, you get a higher reflection from plastic. So it wouldn't be totally reflective. So you would take it down maybe to 0.1. Let's see, 0.1, and then you would bring up your metalness a little bit. And then we've got this IOR. This is more index of refraction, which is used for liquids, okay, but not really for material for metal. So you have to kind of be careful how you use this, okay. Usually air, if you have a metal ball, air is just 1, so just type in 1, and that will give you just air, that your object's in air. All right, so we can kind of mess around with this a little bit. For plastic, plastic does reflect things, not a lot, so you just kind of bring that down a little bit. You can see it a little bit of reflection in there, and you can make something look like plastic. You can add some diffuse roughness. So you get the idea. So you can do a lot of really, really cool things with this material. And I think this looks pretty good because we've got more of a polyurethane for the dice. They're not porcelain. They're made out of plastic. So polyurethanes, it will reflect the environment, but not intensely. Okay? All right, so we got something that looks really good. And then the pips, let's go to the pips. So let's click on the pips. The pips, that looks pretty good actually. It's more of a paint. It's not going to reflect as much as the outside. but I think we'll stick with that with just the way it looks right now. Looks pretty good. It reflects the environment a little bit, but it's not crisp. So it looks pretty good. I like that. Let's try that and see how that looks. Of course, we can deaden that a little bit more with the roughness as we bring it up. If we want to just kind of dull it a little bit more, we can. But I kind of like what we had. Okay. All right, so let's bring that in there. That looks pretty good. Okay. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay, IOR, let's go to 1 on that. Now that did change quite a bit. Look at that. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit, down a little bit more. Here we go. I might want to bring this up a little bit, I guess. Give it a little more shine, because it's going to be a little bit shinier. Okay, now it's really hard to tell with this lighting. Interior color, we can do off, we can do interior neutral. It's kind of what you probably want to use to get the right color. We've got different colors in here. Interior 2 neutral, exterior 2 color, exterior 1 neutral. So I think interior neutral is the best. There we go. You can kind of see what's happening. You can also look at instead of the shader ball, maybe the teapot. Here we go. See how the teapot, I think that looks pretty good actually, as far as the pip color goes. Okay, enough talking. A lot of times you're just gonna have to experiment, and then you go out and add lighting and rendering. Okay, some other things you need to know is transmission. Of course, we'll talk more in depth on this. Transmissions, like when you have a leaf in front of your face and you can kind of see through it, light kind of spills through that leaf. Subsurface scattering for skin, same type of thing. You can work with transmission and subsurface, but subsurface is like your skin. You can see your skin layer underneath is your muscle tissue and blood. So you can work with that. Subsurface is mainly for skin, what we use for skin. Coat, and sheen is used for car paint. Emission is used for glow. So if you want to add glow to an object, okay, emission. Thin film, kind of like water, but like bubbles that you see. Like you blow bubbles and you see the bubble and it turns like kind of like a rainbowish color. It's very thin, reflective, almost looks like a glass ball. And then you have geometry, that allows you to add opacity, which is transparency to an object. And then bump mapping would be more like adding texture. So if I wanted to add a little texture to this, make it look granular, or just add a surface to it to make it look bumpy or whatever, that's where you'd add your bump maps. And the rest of the stuff down here has to do with rendering, matte rendering, AOVs, advanced rendering. And then, I'll get more into this later if we need to use that, but basically these are the ones that are going to be using the most, from geometry all the way up to what we have here, specular and base. It's still very robust, okay? So you can open these up and close them if you want to. Anyway, I think we're good. So I do want to show you one last thing here with Hypershade. Let's say I want to go ahead and open this up to see how it looks inside of Maya. So it's a visual coding thing. You can connect things together. So we've got our base color, which is the color we designated, that goes into the surface of the shader. Okay, and then we've got the pips, and has its own surface shader. So I've got to go in there and click on that. So you can add things to this. If you want to, you can move these around and you can add things to this. So we've got 2D textures, okay, that we can drag and drop. So I could go in here and add, let's just say, a fractal. Okay, click on a fractal. So what this looks like, let's bring this open this up a little bit more. So we've got the texture, okay, the place 2D texture. So that basically, if I click on that, I can go over to the right hand side and repeat it, make it smaller. If I go to 0.5 or 2, and I'd have to kind of play with it to see which way it goes. But your out alpha, okay, your out color can go into your bump mapping, okay. So we've got transmission, subsurface, screens, opacity, normal maps, normal camera. This is my basic color here. Our node that we have our displacement shader here. So if I do my fractal, I probably am going to want to add it as a normal map. Okay, so I probably want to go out color into my normal, and that will give me a bump mapping. Okay, let's go into normal. Let's see if we go into geometry, and yeah, it added it to it. Okay, and you can see our amplitude, and if I double click on that, you can see that we got it hooked up. Okay, and it might be just too small to see, or this preview will not show a bump map. We're going to go more into this, but I just wanted to show you really quickly how you would use the Hypershader and to map your materials out yourself, adding materials, dragging and dropping, or just clicking on these. You can click on a file, and this allows me to add a texture to this if I wanted to. So if I find a texture like a wood texture, I can add it to this. If I click on this, I can add it into as a file. So I can drag and drop it into this area here, and then pop it out of this into my color. So I can put this out into my color. Okay, all right. And that texture will then show through as a wood kettle. Okay, so I can also select it and delete it. Okay, so that's how the Hypershade works. Pretty interesting, and we'll get more into materials later on, but this is just kind of a real quick overview of the Hypershade. I don't really go in here unless I'm doing a really complex shader or a material, so we're just doing, I'm just showing you two ways to create things. So I'm going to close this. All right. So now we're done with the texturing, if you will, adding the material to the object. And the next thing we're going to do in the next video is show you, we're going to add a really simplistic cube and turn it into a small table. And then we're going to duplicate the object and start lighting and rendering, and then we'll be finished. All right, I'll see you in the next video.